have you ever thought this way that the different meaning of a single word can change the entire context of the question? This question from UPSC 2025, first word is sculptors, second one is breadth. Now if you miss it's like similarly sounding other words, the sculptures, which means murti, a sculpture, and a sculptor, which means someone who is making those sculptures. Breadth means that they expands, and the second one is breadth. That means passing. So breadth of life or breadth of life. Breadth of life means the sculptures which were spanning across different varieties of life, like musicians, fishermen, farmers, women, daily life. So this was the first mistake you can say most of the aspirants have committed while writing an answer to this question, that they missed these two words and entire context of the question set to change. Even if the entire context is not changing, there are chances that the answer will get deviated a little bit from the original demand of the question. So the first mistake is missing the actual meaning of the words. Another word is art form. Question is about Chandella Artform. It is very often, it has been seen very often that students are actually writing about Khajuraho temples. They are elaborating Khajuraho temples. One mistake students have committed, that they are writing about architecture, Chandella architecture. Question is not about architecture. Architecture के बारे में नहीं है. Question is about art form. अगर art form के बारे में question है, that art form is also particularly related to sculptors. Sculpture के बारे में है. So it is like, this is the first mistake. Students have gone elaborating about the Chandella architecture, which is not the actual demand of the question. Second is, question is asking you to elucidate. Oh, what is the meaning of elucidate? Elucidate का मतलब लोग आपको बता देंगे आपके कमेंट्स में, नोट्स में कि elucidate मतलब बखान कर दो. elucidate का मतलब सिर्फ बखान करना नहीं होता. elucidate means that calls स्पष्ट कीजिए. अगर आप हिंदी अगर आपको पता हो तो स्पष्ट का मतलब टू ब्रिंग इन क्लैरिटी. हाउ टू ब्रिंग इन क्लैरिटी? अगर आप इफ यू आर स्टेटिंग समथिंग एंड इफ यू वांट टू ब्रिंग इन क्लैरिटी टू व्हाट यू आर स्टेटिंग, व्हाट यू आर सेइंग, you need to give some facts, you need to give some points, then only you can state with clarity. So if the question is talking about elucidate, question is asking you to elucidate, that means you need to give some facts related to art form, Chandella art forms. It could be facts, it could be examples. तो अगर आप लिख भी रहे हैं आंसर and if you are not giving the facts, if you are not giving the examples, then certainly you are not meeting the actual demand of the question. फिर आपको नंबर भी वैसे ही एवरेज वाले आते हैं. So this was the overall thing, like you can say कि I told all this to understand what the question is asking, what is the contextual demand. अब ये चीजें आपको कोई बताता नहीं है. And you also like loaded with content, भर भर के आपने content पढ़ा हुआ है, content का notes आपके पास, कुछ भी question आया, ये topic मुझे आता मैं लिख दूंगा. But that the understanding the demand of the question, that holds the key, because UPSC mains writing is like 50% content होना चाहिए आपके पास, but you also need to write contextually relevant answers. That is very much important. So this initial exercise is like to understand the contextual demand of the question. Now, how to structure the answer? You need to structure the answer. To structure the answer, first thing is you will write an introduction. As I always say in all my sessions, that a very beautiful introduction, to write a very beautiful and easy introduction, is just to pick the keywords of the question and write it, frame it in a sentence that acts as an introduction. In this, an introduction to this question can be written. You can write about Chandelas, their period, the Khajuraho temples, and the sculptures found around the Khajuraho temples, and how those sculptures are actually the breath of life and full of resilient vigor. Ultimately, the question is expecting you to elaborate on the role of a sculpture. If you go on writing only about the sculptures, सिर्फ मूर्तियों के बारे में अगर आप इलेबोरेट करते चले गए तो यू आर गोइंग टू मिस दिस स्कल्प्टर, रोल ऑफ ए स्कल्प्टर. इसकी बात को आपको लिखना है, यही चीज लिखनी है आंसर में. So in introduction, you can write that the sculptors of Chandella period were very lively. They had lot of awareness, and with their skill, they created this art form that is full of resilient vigor and breath of life. Now the second thing is like body of your answer. Now in the body of the answer, you need to elaborate these two. You need to give examples, you need to give facts to elucidate that yes, the sculptors of those period were actually trying to fill their creations with these two qualities. The two qualities the question is mentioning, quality number 1, quality number 2, you need to elaborate on these qualities. Very simple, you can simply like talk about dynamism, like the sculptures were like full of dynamism. उस टाइम समय की जो मूर्तियां थी, they full of dynamism. Variety of life scenes were portrayed, like farmers, fishermen, women, people working on fields. These things have been elaborated. You can also write about erotic scenes, and then you need to like connect the erotic scenes with the importance of fertility. अब ऐसे करके अगर आप लिखते हैं चीजों को, देन यू आर लाइक elucidating. अब इन सारी चीजों को लिख करके you need to give examples. Like yes, there is a sculpture in the Khajuraho temples which is like this. There is a dynamism in the sculptures. Different forms of life scenes are there. You talk about fishermen, how women are depicted. इस तरीके से if you are writing the answer, then actually you are elucidating it with respect to these two qualities. At the end, you write the conclusion that again, in the conclusion, you need to bring the role of sculptors, that the sculptors were very aware, they were having that dynamism, they were having the awareness of those times, and the art form they have left behind is actually a great cultural heritage endowed by we Indians. ऐसे करके you can write a conclusion में आपने पूरे आंसर को summarize कर दिया within a sentence. If you write this way, then you are going to meet the contextual demand. तब आपको नंबर भी अच्छे आएंगे. See you in next session.